Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer. I'm with CUGC HQ, and I am happy to welcome Goliath Technologies back to the CUGC webinar stage today. We're going to talk about troubleshooting Citrix's slow complaints and proving that it's actually not Citrix. So I'm excited to get into this. I know we've got some demos coming up today and lots of discussion. Yemi Ladyju is a pre-sales engineer at Goliath, and this is his first time with us at CUGC. So welcome, Yemi. I'm glad to have you with us today. Moderating our webinar for us and keeping an eye on all of your questions for us today is George Spiers. George is a CTP, so he is also, I think this is your first time moderating for us, George. You want to say hello?
It is. Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. It is my first time as a moderator. Yep.
Well, thank you for being here today. So as I mentioned, George is going to keep an eye on all of your questions. And I also mentioned there will be presentation and demos today. So what we'd like to do is have you go ahead and type your questions into the question box. And we'll take some of the more general questions throughout the presentation and demos. But if you have specific questions relating to, very specific concerns about your environment, please do go ahead and type those in, but we'll try to take those closer to the end of the presentation. But do, like I said, type them in along the way. George is going to keep an eye on those and keep us rocking and rolling. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Yemi to get us started.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Quickly, what we're going to talk about here is, the different kind of, Citrix's slow complaints that we might get. Typically 95% of those are within one of these three kind of sections here. So, the Logon Initiation, with whether those applications are available to the end users. The Logon Duration, where, applications are available. However, it takes an extremely long amount of time for the users to be able to access those applications. And finally, in-session performance, which typically is a majority of is the root cause of kind of majority of all of those kind of Citrix is slow complaints. So what we're going to do is go through some actual real-world scenarios that we've gotten back from our customers that used our technology to be able to troubleshoot Citrix's slow complaints, whether that's within the Logon Initiation stage, the Logon Duration, and also an in-session performance. So we'll look at some real-world scenarios. Also take a look at some of the troubleshooting guidelines and best practices for troubleshooting those kind of issues when they occur. And finally, we'll take a look at the Goliath approach and how our customers in this case, or in these cases, were able to resolve these issues using the Goliath solution. So when we hear trouble, Citrix is slow, IT administrators are, they typically know that, Citrix isn't usually the case. There are a lot of factors that go into that equation, right? So whether that's the network, the underlying hypervisor host, if you're having, let's say, a double hop configuration using VMware and Citrix, it could be the VMware side. So, getting visibility into each one of those pieces that affect Citrix is extremely hard because there's different teams and there's different monitoring tools for each team. So getting that full visibility into the entire delivery infrastructure gives you the ability then to make some real-time and actionable decisions based on Citrix. Something that our marketing always says here is, whenever you're having random but persistent issues, it just means that you just don't have enough visibility or data to be able to find the patterns or find the root cause of those issues.
Yeah, Yemi, I'll just chip in here as well. Just you've pretty much summed it up very well. So in a Citrix deployment, we gotta pretty much depend on a lot of different components, as you've mentioned: DNS, Active Directory, hypervisor hosts. There's a lot of components essentially in play that could cause problems in a Citrix environment. So that is where monitoring becomes essentially critical.
Absolutely. So we're going to step through some of these troubleshooting scenarios here and go through kind of, as I mentioned, what the impact is for each one of these scenarios, as well as how Goliath comes into play and how we've helped our customers with these scenarios actually get to the root cause and fix issues quickly and efficiently. So the first scenario here is an unexpected outage. We have a major health system here delivering all 4 of the major EMR, EHR applications via Citrix. And the problem here was that specifically their Meditech application, after an application update, there was some misconfiguration and the Meditech application was not available to the end users. So when we talk about impact, this is 40,000 clinicians not being able to access their critical EMR, EHR applications, which directly impacts their ability to provide care for their patients. So in this sort of scenario, obviously, the notification then would be panicked users calling into the help desk or the IT staff, trying to figure out why their applications are not available and why they're sitting on their computer in front of a patient, not being able to look up their health records, so on and so forth. So some of the troubleshooting steps that we've heard from IT professionals when issues like this come up would be just trying to collaborate between the teams. So talk about, go to the networking team or take a look at some of the virtual machines that are available and, try to troubleshoot it from an infrastructure point of view. Maybe take a deeper look into those VMs as well to get like event logs, so on and so forth. But there are a bunch of different places that you can look to kind of get started with getting insight into why these applications are not available to the users. So some of the tips that we have here would be, utilizing the free tools like Citrix Director, so on and so forth. Understanding that, troubleshooting Citrix, as we mentioned before, because there are different departments or different teams that are involved, we want to make sure that it's a collaborative effort as opposed to, a finger pointing or blaming session. And finally, just being able to triage, based on symptoms. So try to understand the scope, try to put together, gather as much information as possible. George, from your experience, how would you, is there anything you would like to add as far as, tips for troubleshooting in this sort of outage scenario?
Yeah, sure. So in this scenario, we know that we have a complete outage, which impacts healthcare, so it's pretty major. The complete outage rules it out being a specific issue with a department or a specific issue with an office location, for example. So at this stage, because it's a complete outage, I would concentrate on the data center. To me, it's most likely going to be an outage within the walls of the data center. With that said, you still have a lot of components in this data center to check and to check over. If you use tools, free tools like Citrix Director, that could allow you to discover if there's VDA, virtual machines that are unregistered, or if there's any problems with the Citrix licensing or the delivery controllers. But Director will not tell you if there's a problem with storefront or there's a problem with the storage or the network or so on. So in relying on free tools, it might take longer to determine what the problem is. But my tips with dealing in this scenario with a complete outage is to try and launch the application yourself. It sounds quite simple, but if you try yourself, you will see how far you get. So for example, if you can launch the application, you know that storefront is working, the licensing from Citrix is working, the delivery controllers are okay because you've been brokered to a desktop. So if the application launches fine, but you get an error message after the logon, it may be an application fault. If it's an application-specific fault, you can work with the vendor to resolve that. If it's not an application issue, for example, if you log on to a storefront and you can't see the published application, then it's probably going to be an issue with storefront and potentially the delivery controller communication. So yeah, my tips would be to try it yourself, do process of elimination inside of the data center.
Thank you very much, George. And I think that's a good segue into, you know, first of all, the impact here. You know, what our you know, specifically this customer told us is that, you know, if they were not alerted proactively, that this potentially would have taken them about 2 hours or more to be able to identify the root cause of this issue, of this outage, right? And in this particular case, we're talking about 40,000 users being impacted at the start of their workday, you know, not being able to basically not being able to provide care for the patients. So looking at 40,000 users for 2 hours, you know, that's 80,000 hours there of downtime. And then on top of that, I mean, from an IT perspective or a help desk perspective, that's hundreds, maybe even thousands of help desk tickets being open and calls into help desk trying to figure out what's going on, you know, as far as with the applications not being available. So taking a look at it from the Goliath approach, you know, because we're testing the entire delivery infrastructure from multiple locations, you know, by logging in the same way a user would, in this case, the Goliath virtual user would have detected an outage, alerted the team immediately with screenshot evidence. So this is giving them, you know, the ability to review the screenshots and quickly identify that the problem was in a application enumeration stage, meaning that the application was not available on the storefront page. Particularly with this customer, they told us that not just, you know, that the application, you know, not just the alert showing them that the application wasn't enumerated, but that screenshot showing them that other applications were enumerated on the storefront page quickly allow them to identify, okay, maybe it's a Citrix configuration issue, because showing the storefront page with other applications there, you know, gives you the ability to say, okay, well, my storefront page is fine, as George mentioned. You know, my delivery controller seems to be working fine. There's a connection to the backend SQL database because applications are enumerating, and then they're able to then take a look and figure out that it was a permission issue, meaning that the administrators had access to the applications, but there was a simple misconfiguration in Citrix Direct or Citrix Studio that caused you know, these applications not to be available to the end users. So, you know, the difference here is because we're able to troubleshoot the entire delivery infrastructure and give screenshot evidence, you know, it really speeds up that troubleshooting process. And as well, because you're able to then analyze your environment and schedule these launches based on your application, you're able to detect issues before users are impacted. So when we talk about the impact, here we have a resolution time of, you know, 10 minutes. And because this was triggered before users actually are starting their workday, you know, 0 users were impacted by this outage. So I'm actually going to jump over to a demo to kind of show, you know, specifically how this looks in the environment, how this looks within the technology, and give you guys some perspective of what's going on during each one of these launches. So let's see here. here. So I actually have here a video of the application availability monitor launching a Citrix session, just so everyone's on the same page, being able to understand what's going on during one of these launches. So you see here the application availability monitor is able to open up the a web browser, navigate to the storefront page, log in with credentials just like an actual user would. It's able to validate that the storefront page enumerated, navigate the storefront page, and then start the application launch process. This is fully customizable, so you can choose how many applications are being launched, whether those are EMR applications or any other applications being delivered by Citrix. It goes through that process, confirming and validating that those applications have enumerated or those applications are available, and then logs off and exits the Citrix session. So switch back into the demo here, and so then if there is an issue, or in this case an outage, you're now able to analyze that from within the technology on the application availability monitor analysis tab. So this page is really broken up into two sections here. You have this top section, which is this high-level overview of each one of your launches. You can filter by date range, by endpoint, which could be the location at which each one of these launches are taking place. And you can also filter by what applications are being launched, so on and so forth. The blue bars here just show you the average logon times, and then the yellow trend line is your overall application availability. Obviously, we want this to be at 100%, but this is in our demo lab, so we're actually staging some failures here to give you a perspective of what it looks like. So this bottom section gives you more granular detail into each one of these launches. So you can see the date and time, the applications or desktops that are being launched, the endpoint, which again is that location, and then finally, the application's availability, right? So was the launch successful or did it fail? And in the case where we're talking about an application not being enumerated to the storefront page, you can drill down here and see, everything there that you saw in that video is represented here with screenshots. So in this particular case, this is a very similar case to the user scenario. They're actually able to click down here, see the screenshot, see, okay, in this case, the application was not enumerating to the storefront page, and you can see from there, you can then start that troubleshooting process, really collapsing that process down and giving you insight into what the problem is and where the problem is, so you can get this, solve these issues before it actually impacts the users.
I'll just add on that. I actually have two questions which would be helpful for the audience. But firstly, I want to touch on the screenshots. I think the screenshots are excellent. It really takes a lot of guesswork out of troubleshooting for a Citrix administrator. So for example, if we have a network connectivity issue between storefront and the delivery controllers, we're probably going to get a screenshot from the application availability monitor, which shows clearly that no applications can be enumerated. So there's nothing better really than hard evidence that's presented to a Citrix administrator. So I think the screenshots are really great. The two questions I have, if you don't mind. The first one is, what kind of scale have you seen the application availability monitor run at?
Yeah, so one of our customers actually, they actually are running the application availability monitor from about 28 hospital locations. It's another EHR application, testing process, and they're actually running over 15,000 application launches per day using the application availability monitor from different locations from all over the country, and because it's all kind of centrally managed and centrally scaled, they have the ability to then, from one console, analyze the entire delivery infrastructure from different locations.
Thanks. That's pretty impressive numbers, and I think it really shows how powerful and flexible the application availability monitor is. So that's great. The second question I had, if a simulation was to fail, maybe the application availability monitor couldn't connect to storefront or the page wouldn't render, how are your alerts delivered to the Citrix administrator?
Yeah, so alerts can be configured to go out via email, text message, integrated into a ticketing solution. So maybe it's something like ServiceNow, and we can even do syslog or SNMP traps. So, giving you that full range of notification options as well.
Okay, thanks. I do have another question from one of the members in the audience, if you have time to cover that now. Basically, one of our attendees, Mandabar Singh, has asked what components need to be deployed for application availability monitor.
Right. So typically the only prerequisites for the application availability monitor is a Windows operating system, Internet Explorer 11, on that machine, and then from there you'd be able to then install that a piece of software that will actually from that location test the delivery infrastructure. You also will need actual Citrix credentials, so it does take up a Citrix license. Giving with those credentials, you'll be able to then test specific applications and be able to confirm and validate that the applications are available.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. So I'm going to switch back now to the slide, and then we'll go through another scenario here. So scenario number 2, long logon duration. So here we have an organization, a national U.S.-based law firm with over 19 global offices. They're delivering specific Zen app and Zen desktop Citrix applications, we're talking about legal staff here, and legal staff typically bill hourly. So when legal staff is complaining about long logon times, that's an actual problem that could be affecting the bottom line. So in this particular case, the help desk was getting getting frustrated because they're getting pressure from management as well as pressure from the legal staff saying, why are my applications taking forever to load? So going through some troubleshooting steps here, obviously the notification would be those angry or frustrated legal staff not being able to bill correctly or just not being able to access a lot of this critical workplace information. So some troubleshooting steps for logon duration. This we hear a lot is kind of a very, very hard issue to troubleshoot because there's so many things that could go into that user's logon process, right? So whether those are group policies, whether that's resource utilization on the entire environment, because if you have a load balanced environment where different delivery controllers could possibly be assigned to broker these Citrix sessions, you have to make sure that you check all of those specific machines using tools like Director to get that high level overview of the logon process, and kind of going down that scope, trying to identify, well, is this affecting one user? Is this affecting users on a specific delivery group? Is this affecting just the entire user base in my environment? So there are a lot of things that go on into that go into that troubleshooting process for long logon durations. So some of the tips here is to establish the scope. I think that's a very we hear that's a very, very important step. because that really gives you some insight into, is it an environmental issue, or is it just a specific piece of the environment or user that's having that issue. Looking for patterns because you've established a scope. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of different pieces that go into logon duration, so it's very hard to get all of that information together.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add on that as well. So many of the points you've covered is similar to my idea of how you would troubleshoot a logon duration when logons are slow. So if a user or group of users call in to report that logons are slow, I would speak with the service desk just to determine if there's any patterns to the logon slowness. So for example, are all users affected? Are users coming out of one of the particular 19 global offices? Are the users who are affected working from home? Are they going through Citrix Gateway, or are they rooting internally? Are they launching specific applications or specific virtual desktops? Are they launching specific desktops or applications in a particular data center? So what you're really trying to do is determine a pattern, because when you identify a pattern, you can come to a resolution quicker. So for example, if all users are routing through Gateway and they're experiencing logon slowness, you could log on to the Gateway GUI and check the bandwidth throughput, the packet engine CPU consumption, memory consumption, and so on. Alternatively, you could look at tools such as Citrix Director to determine if logon scripts or group policies are causing the logon slowness. Maybe something in your environment was changed without you knowing. So whilst these are just examples, identifying patterns and running through process of elimination is definitely the easiest and most efficient way to tackle logon slowness issues.
Thank you very much, George. You know, I can speak from experience. You know, this process is very, very lengthy. You know, when you start getting some you know, reports, or you start getting you know, tickets coming in about logon duration issues, you know, what we start to hear is, you know, people are kind of just blocking out the rest of their day to try and find a resolution to these issues. So typically we see resolution times up to 5 hours or maybe even longer, because again, there's so many pieces of the environment that that you have to take a look at. Some organizations have a ton of group policies that are being executed or being processed, logon scripts, so on and so forth. So, you know, not having insight into that means that you have to kind of go piece by piece, which, you know, can contribute to those long resolution times for logon duration. So, taking a look at it from the Goliath approach, you know, this particular customer, they were actually alerted to the fact that, you know, a specific user or user group were experiencing specifically long logon durations. Obviously, you know, a user could call in as well if you don't have alerts configured, but you know, that option is there in the technology, and this particular user took advantage of that. Now, as far as with the troubleshooting approach with the Goliath solution, it was fairly simple. It's just locate the specific session, click on drill down into the session, and really just take a look at each one of the 33 plus stages of the logon process. Not only the stages, but you can also see how long each process took. So they were quickly able to identify that it was an issue with a specific group policy, and then focus their attention there. So it's really simple and easy. In a couple clicks, they're able to see exactly what's being executed at each script, each policy, what specific virtual machine is responsible for the session, as well as brokering what's going on at Citrix receivers. So getting all of that information in one single pane, you know, this customer is able to identify a specific registry extension and then troubleshoot that that way. So, the difference here is you're able to quickly disqualify or qualify, any troubleshooting path based on actual concrete data. And then, in this case, they're able to set up alerts to make sure that, as log-on times in their environment are starting to creep up, whether there's changes or anything like that on group policies or registry extensions or anything like that, they're able to then track those with that embedded Citrix intelligence and automation, as well as giving them preemptive alerts to be able to alert them when issues or potential issues are going to happen in their environment. So looking at it with the Goliath approach, we're looking at resolution times of up to 5 to 10 minutes because you're able to quickly identify the root cause of that logon issue and then focus your troubleshooting efforts there. I'm going to jump right into the demonstration here to show you what that looks like from within the technology. So one thing that I wanted to point out before we jump into a specific session is the Citrix topology view that automatically maps out the delivery infrastructure, your Citrix infrastructure from within our technology. We talk a lot about embedded intelligence, so that starts as soon as you deploy our technology. You can see here, I want to jump right into the delivery infrastructure here, the delivery layer, showing you that logical view of the environment. And one thing I wanted to point out is you get a breakdown of logon duration or average logon duration based on the delivery group. So this gives you an ability to quickly identify the scope of these issues, right? So whether that's, is it affecting one specific user? Is it affecting users on a specific delivery group? And then focus the troubleshooting efforts there. Now we're going to jump into a specific session here. So we have a session here by a Michael Clark. Sounds like a great guy. But you can see this page is really broken down in the 3 sections. You have the top level, which is going to give you kind of similar metrics to what we get from Citrix Director. I just want to point out that this technology is not dependent on Citrix Director. You don't even have to have that in your environment to be able to get this full detailed breakdown of the logon process. So you can see here that high-level overview, but we take it a step further. We give you a breakdown of what's going on at the brokering stages. So at the delivery controller, whether those are authentication, any logon scripts, or profile load times. We break it down at Citrix receiver. So this is where you would identify issues connecting to the micro VPN or ICA file downloads, and so on and so forth. And then finally, at this bottom section, we're actually able to break down each script and policy that's being executed, during this user's logon. So here's where you would see things like authentication at the domain controller. You would see things like what delivery controller brokered this session. You would see what specific group policies are being executed and how long they took. So this is where you would see printer mapping, drive mapping, any registry extensions, so on and so forth. And in this particular case, they were able to find that one of their local group policies was taking about 37 seconds or so, and they were able to then use that data to be able to focus on that group policy and fix those issues. It looks like here in this case, Michael was having long logon times, and most of that was in the brokering and client validation. So this is another use case where the IT staff would just quickly be able to take a look at this specific delivery controller in their environment, take a look at resource utilization, disk latency, so on and so forth, to help remediate this logon issue.
Excellent. I have just 2 questions on the logon duration. So how many stages are actually captured in the logon process?
Yeah, so that's something that we get a lot, that question, and it really does depend on what's configured in your environment for user logons. Obviously, it's important that some environments have a ton of logon scripts that are being executed, or group policies, But in our experience, we tend to see that it's about 33 plus stages. We've seen it even get up to 60 stages of a logon process. So it really does depend on what's being configured in your environment for logons. However, if it is configured, or if something is configured in your environment, it shows up in this display.
Okay, great. And this data is really critical, critical to not just an administrator, Citrix administrator, but it's actually also critical to the business as well, right? I guess management are very interested in the logon times, not just from today, but what the logon times were 6 months ago and so on. So my question off of that would be, how long is this data actually stored for historical lookups, trend analysis, reporting, etc.? How long is it stored for?
Yeah, so this detail into each stage of the logon process, it's all stored for however long you would like to have it. Because the solution is really powered by a SQL backend, you can configure how long you want to keep this data for. So whether that's 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, and then use that data. What we've seen our customers do is use the data to create kind of weekly, monthly, quarterly reports on logon duration in the environment. So that's like something that management would use to then having a monthly report on logon duration for the entire environment gives them a better understanding of what's going on in the environment, and also insight into end user experience as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. So jumping back in to the PowerPoint presentation here, we're going to go to the third and final scenario, and this specifically, session slowness or in-session performance is probably the #1 cause of the Citrix's slow complaints. And in this particular scenario, we're talking about a top 10 healthcare system utilizing, delivering 2 of the major applications, EHR applications via Citrix. Here we have users specifically complaining about in-session performance every time they would try to scan a document into their EHR application. So obviously these are patient critical applications, obviously the clinicians or doctors or physicians, sitting there in front of a patient going, sorry for the delay, Citrix is slow, or Epic is slow, or Meditech is slow. That really, #1, is kind of embarrassing, and #2, it really does impact the ability for those clinicians or healthcare individuals to actually provide care for those patients. So, in this case, the notification would be, users calling in, talking about, I can't access my applications are really slow. Every time I scan something, I have to wait, for a couple, maybe like 30 seconds or so, maybe up to a minute. What's going on? And then troubleshooting steps from there would be, taking a look at those virtual machines, taking a look at the scanner drivers, trying to take a look at, what's going on in that environment from a network point of view, right? So trying to collaborate with the networking team, asking them what's going on. They have to look at their monitoring tools, talk to the infrastructure team, right? The storage team, try to figure out, what could be causing those issues. So some tips that we have here would be, utilizing the monitoring tools that each department has. So the network team is going to have their own monitoring tools, and the infrastructure team, things like that. So being able to try and, although they might not be very sufficient, however, just getting information from all of those particular departments is very important. Taking a look at those virtual machines on a machine-to-machine basis, figuring out what session hosts or supporting those applications and try to take a look at those. Obviously, it's a very collaborative effort as well. So going back to that finger pointing or blaming, we want to make sure that that's not happening, because that doesn't help the end user. It doesn't help figure out the issues there. George, did you have anything to add on some troubleshooting steps?
Yeah, again, it's very similar to what you've just explained to the audience. So when a user calls in to complain that Citrix is slow, it could be anything. It could be the logons, or it could be in-session performance, it could be printing, etc. There's a whole list of things that it could potentially be related to. So in this case, it's obviously in-session slowness, as Yami has explained. The application is slow, and more specifically, a specific user-initiated workflow is slow. So often in this scenario, without the aid of monitoring tools, I would try to perform the same steps as the user myself, just to see if I could reach the same outcome. Do I get the same problem or not? If I can get the same problem, then I'll probably not bother the end user anymore, and I'll just troubleshoot the issue with my own account, in my own user account, in an isolated environment. So when a specific user workflow, such as scanning, is slow and without any specific monitoring tools at hand, what you could do is end up firing from the hip. So for example, you could begin updating scanner software, you could start updating the scanner drivers and so on. These may be the first things that spring to your mind, because you don't have anything else that tells you what's wrong. You don't have a monitoring product saying, here, this is a problem. So you got to think of ideas for yourself. And all this takes time, and it potentially brings instability to the environment as well. Because if you're installing drivers or scanner software in Citrix Gold Images, and you're not testing much due to the pressure of resolving the problem, that could bring extra instability into the environment. So that is dangerous in itself. But each step you try will involve testing, as Yami has explained, and it will potentially mean many hours will be wasted before a resolution is met.
That is a perfect segue. It's almost like you've seen these slides before, but that's exactly what this customer was actually going to do. They were actually going to go through the process of updating the scanner drivers in their environment, which would have taken up to 2 weeks to do. And on top of that, they're doing this, as George said, from the hip, not knowing if this is going to actually resolve those issues. So taking a look at it from the Goliath point of view, as I mentioned before, just like in Logon Duration, the notification here could be latency-based threshold, latency-based alerts, per user. So the help desk will automatically know, be alerted when specific users are having latency issues. And also the users could call in and complain about issues with performance while scanning documents into their EHR, EMR applications. But here, this is an example of our customer using the technology as basically the Citrix defense program, or allowing the Citrix team to defend themselves, going, well, this isn't an issue coming from Citrix. Here we have the troubleshooting steps here from the IT department was really clicking on this user session, and quickly, from clicking on that session, identifying that, oh, this is a bandwidth issue. Because we break out, unique metrics like user connection speed, which is the amount of bandwidth that the user has for Citrix at their endpoint. They're able to quickly identify, wait, hold on, this user doesn't have enough input line speed, meaning that, every time they try to scan something, that really uses up all of that bandwidth that's available for Citrix, and causes the application to hang or poor in-session performance. In this case, they're then able to then not just look at that current session, but look back at a session from a week ago when the issues were not apparent, and try to figure out what has changed. So going back a week ago and seeing, well, they had enough, input line speed a week ago, and then try to narrow it down to a point in time where those issues actually started, and then taking all of that information as a Citrix defense team to the networking team, saying, okay, what happened on Tuesday at 2 p.m. That's causing these issues with scanning specifically, and then the network team automatically is able to, okay, well, we implemented a new appliance. And as soon as they took that out of the rotation, then they're able to see right away that the input line speed jumped up. Turns out there was a duplexing issue, and they're able to confirm that those resolution actions that were taken actually solved the problem, as opposed to updating the scanners and then hoping that it solved the problem. So the difference here is those unique. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm still seeing slide 17. I'm guessing we've moved forward, but my screen, unless it's just me, but my screen still says slide 17.
Yeah, I think we are on slide 17. Do you see the user impact for the Goliath solution? Okay, so we'll move on into the screenshots in a little bit. I think the slides that you have might have been changed right before it.
Okay.
So really quickly before I jump into the screenshots, I just wanted to point out the Goliath difference, which is those unique metrics that allow you to collaborate by taking a look at historic sessions, pinpointing where the issue is, and collaborate internally to be able to fix those issues, as well as setting up those preemptive alerts to alert you whenever issues like this are happening in the future. So going on to the screenshots here, we have actual screenshots from this customer and how they utilized those session displays to be able to troubleshoot this issue. So I'm going to use my mouse here. So looking here, they're looking at the affected sessions, and they can see low input line speed, less than a meg of speed here for the input speed. So that correlates then with latency spikes, specifically when the user tried to scan something into their EHR application. And you can see the consistency, between each one of these users' sessions. Looking back then, they then took a look at the previous or historic sessions where these issues weren't happening, right? So looking here and seeing, input line speed being good enough for responsive Citrix session, and you can see that it correlates with low, which is actually pretty good ICA latency here. And then finally pointing it down to a specific point in time where those issues started, and taking all of this information directly to the network team. And I think what really impressed the customer, with this specific example was that this is all real-time data. So as soon as, they went to the networking team saying, okay, there's something going on, can you help us out with this? And then the networking team removed that faulty appliance, you can automatically see that the input line speed for this user session jumps right back up to manageable or reasonable levels where, and now that correlates with reasonable or pretty low ICA latency. So I think the idea here is, the idea of broad and deep visibility, and I think that's something that we really point out with some of these scenarios, is that giving you the ability to see where the problems are, as well as those deep metrics to be able to identify what the problem is. And then go through that troubleshooting process, because we tie in information from, the specific VDI, user experience, the infrastructure, the applications, as well as tying in those EMR, EHR applications. We really give you that full visibility into not just the applications, but the delivery infrastructure and everything that contributes to a responsive Citrix session. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it off to I'm going to open the floor up for any questions that are coming in.
Thanks, Yemi. Excellent presentation. It was really informative. I have a couple of questions just that have come in through the chat. So one customer is asking if there's any specific Nutanix modules for monitoring.
We are able to monitor things across Nutanix, but we don't actually have a built-in integration at this time. We've explored a little bit. We have a couple customers that have just started asking for it. I know it's popular in the market. What we often hear is that they have excellent tools of their own already, and most of the people we've spoken to have said that as long as we can monitor sessions being delivered across it, that's sufficient, because they prefer to use Nutanix's tools directly.
Thank you. And you, I guess, on the topic of specific modules, you've mentioned Epic, Meditech, Allscripts throughout the webinar, Yemi. Does Goliath have specific modules for these EMR and EHR applications?
Absolutely. So for the four major ones, I know you mentioned Meditech, Epic, and Allscripts, as well as Cerner. And actually, in the case of Cerner, we're actually, deployed at their RHO data center in Kansas City. So, giving, not just that delivery infrastructure, which typically, most of these would be delivered by either Citrix or VMware Horizon, as well as giving you insight into the performance of those applications. Cerner, Epic, where we're actually a part of their Epic App Orchard program. We're the only monitoring tool a part of their App Orchard program, giving you visibility into not just delivery infrastructure, but also the Epic application as well.
Okay, great. And another one from one of the attendees is, can you tell, or can Goliath Performance Monitor tell what a user is doing in session? So for example, what websites they're visiting or what applications they're using within a virtual desktop?
Absolutely. I'm going to jump back into the technology to show that a little bit, if time permits. So there's two ways that our customers typically are able to figure out what exactly is being done during a specific session, right? So because we break down the ICA protocol, and we break down, exactly what's going on and what channels are being used in the ICA protocol, you're able to see on this specific session, any sort of, printer bandwidth, audio bandwidth, thin wire bandwidth, which would be the Citrix display adapter. So you can see if a user is doing something graphically intensive that could be affecting the performance of that, affecting that user session, right? And then we also break down all of the processes and applications that are being, kind of utilized on that specific virtual machine. So you can see, what processes are, leaking CPU and memory, something like that. This is an app server, so we wouldn't be able to see specific window titles, but in a VDI application, you're actually able to see, what window titles there are. So a lot of times we would see things like, when a user is complaining about poor in-session performance, we see things like ESPN First Take on their Google Chrome browser, which is utilizing so much CPU that's actually detrimental to their user session. Does that answer the question? Hopefully that does.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. Well, certainly for me, and I'm imagining it will be a perfect answer for the attendee as well. So great, thanks. I'm out of questions right now. I think you've explained everything so perfect that that everyone is happy with the information. So thank you.
Thank you very much, George. Your insight was definitely very, very helpful, especially when it comes to troubleshooting issues, from within the environment. I would like to thank everyone for coming. I'm going to send it back to Stephanie.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of links for everyone in the chat. These are the links that are up on this last slide, and then I'm going to put a couple more for you guys. I have a short survey for today's webinar. It's just for CUGC use only, and we always like to get your feedback. It helps us plan future webinars. I'm also putting a link to an event thread, a forum thread in the CUGC forums. If you have more questions or you want to talk about today's webinar, feel free to bring those discussions over there. And finally, I do have an events calendar link for you in case you want to look up when your next local group meeting is or what's going on at my CUGC. So you can take a look out there and see what's going on locally and online. And also just want to invite you to follow us on Twitter. Some of you may have opted in for a chance to win one of 5 $50 Amazon gift cards. So Twitter is where we will make the announcement of the winners. So you definitely want to follow at myCUGC and use hashtag myCUGC whenever you talk about us. We will definitely appreciate the follows. And again, just go out to mycugc.org, join your local group, find out what's going on, get involved. We'd love to have you. And thank you so much to Yemi and George. Appreciate you guys being with us today. Thanks for doing a great webinar, and thanks to everyone for attending.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Stephanie.
All right, I'll let you guys get back to your day. Hope you all have a great rest of the afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.